Bobby? Cindy?
Kaleidoscope. I am your host, Becca, and I am here with Young Bradley.
I'm feeling quite mechanically inclined today.
That's good.
And you know why?
Why?
Because we're about to talk about the Brady Bunch.
Yes. We are going to talk about the Brady vacations, or if you will, the Bradycations, right? This is the podcast that I've been prepping for my entire life. Between this and like the first 4 Friday the 13th are probably like the things that are most committed to my memory. But you know, we just thought everybody's stuck inside, you know, I mean, everybody would be starting to go on spring break and different vacations and go camping, and we can't. So we thought it would be kind of cool for all of us to live vicariously through the Brady Bunch with their lovely trips. We will be talking about all 4 vacations. What? 4, you say, Becca? Yes, we are actually including the camping episode from the first season.
And that's really the first episode that they did go out on location and film.
Yeah.
Even though it's not usually counted among the Vacation trilogy series.
It's not epic or anything, you know, and but whatever. I consider it a vacation. It's definitely like the Brady Bunch's first excursion somewhere as a family. So of course, we're going to have a ton of stuff to talk about, a ton of trivia. And if you don't know, you're not listening to this. If you don't know, the Brady Bunch was a show that ran for 5 seasons, 1969 to 74 on CBS. Very, not incredibly popular when it was on, but has definitely become a massive, massive cult classic and cultural phenomenon, and one of my favorite things ever.
Everything about it is iconic now. You can't mention the Brady Bunch without somebody throwing out a quote. Usually it's Marsha, 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 and that's not my favorite one because it's way overused. But you know, from the house to the characters to Where's Tiger, and everything associated with the Brady Bunch has become a cultural icon, and it's outlived anything else comparable to it. Like, you know, it was often compared to the Partridge Family, of course, because that was sort of, it wasn't a blended family per se, but for some reason that...
Like single mom, lots of kids, they sang, you know, it was congruent.
So the first episode that we're going to talk about was called A Camping We Will Go, and it was the 8th episode of the first season, so it was very early in the run. It premiered on November 14th, 1969. And this was back in the early days of the show when they were still sort of locked into this premise of the blended family, because we had the father with his own 3 boys and the mother with her own 3 girls, and then they all got together and became the Brady Bunch. And in the early days, the plots of the shows sort of always revolved around this battle of the sexes, or this constant bickering because they've got these new intruders in the house, and they gradually moved away from that. And if you had tuned into the 3rd or 4th season and didn't know any better, you wouldn't even know that they weren't actual siblings, even though Greg was kind of making googly eyes at Marcia by that time.
Yeah, which is kind of odd. I mean, that was supposed to be the concept, and that's actually like Robert Reed. That's why he signed on for it. He was interested in a show that had a poignant look at blended families because divorce was, on the rise. And then, of course, he lands on this show. But the first season really does focus mostly on that. It's about creating new family traditions, figuring out how to work together. And then, Mike and Carol trying to, work on their brand new relationship while they've got 6 kids running around, which, but But yeah, the camping we will go definitely just fits into that mold. It's weird because that house, it's inferred that house was built for this family. And even in the first episode, the boys are in a different place, right?
Yeah, there's another house that Mike's living in at the time. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know if it was inferred that or they just changed the house. Because it almost seemed like the boys had ownership of that place.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That first season, it's always like the girls are butting in, but it's like, you know what? No, and I think maybe it's just a sign of the times that the men were the quote-unquote dominant ones. They were the ones in charge, the ones who shouldn't have to change for the women. Whatever, boys.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, we've come a long way. We know better now.
We have.
So I like to always talk about theme songs and lead-ins.
Yes.
So this like everything else associated with the show, this one is very iconic. The checkerboard photos of all of the kids looking at each other and the parents looking at each other. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows the song. The song was written by the series creator Sherwood Schwartz, the lyrics were, and then the music was created by Frank Duvall. And he's kind of an interesting guy because he did a lot of music. He did the theme songs for Gidget, Family Affair, My Three Sons, and he was also an actor who you could see in some sitcoms like I Dream of Jeannie and Petticoat Junction and The Jeffersons, and he even appears in a Brady Bunch episode. He's one of the parents in the episode The Show Must Go On. So he's an interesting guy. And then the music, everybody associates the music, the original season 1 version of the song was not the Brady kids singing. After that, It's always the Brady kids singing. And they re-recorded it 3 different times and reshot it 3 different times after the first one. So a grand total of 4 different lead-ins in 5 seasons. But for the first season, it was a band called the Peppermint Trolley, who were Peppermint Trolley Company, that made the arrangement for the song and then recorded it. But at the last minute, they brought in some studio singers named Paul Parrish, John Beland, and Lois Fletcher, and re-recorded just the lyrics, but the music still belonged to the Peppermint Trolley Company, and they're the ones that got the credit. So we should probably listen.
Here's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up 3 very lovely girls. All of them had hair of gold, like their mother, the youngest one in curl.
So yeah, I'm sure you probably caught yourself singing along to that, right?
Yes, always. And I would love to know, like, if you asked a kid who was like, you know, if you're 6, 7, 8, like where the cutoff is for like people knowing that song.
Oh, today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, you know,
your upbringing.
I introduced
probably.
it very early
yes.
to my daughter and grandson. So.
Oh yes, yes.
But just for fun, let's just take 20 seconds to listen to another song by the Peppermint Trolley Company, because they were an actual band that put out a couple of, you call it sunshine pop, maybe a little psychedelic. Yeah. So this self-titled album that they did in 1968, this is the song called Baby You Come Rolling Across My Mind. So we'll just take a listen to it, but you'll notice that the singers don't quite sound the same, and that's because they brought in those studio singers at the last minute.
When the feeling comes, it's like 1,000 drums pounding in my heart. Since we've been apart, baby, you come rolling across my mind. Baby, you come rolling across my mind.
All right.
So there you go. What do you think of that?
No, I'm not sure why they weren't at the top of the charts.
Yeah. I mean, that's fun. You know, they put out 2 albums, and all you're associated with today is the very first season of the Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch, yeah.
And that's it.
Hey, they probably, that was probably their claim to fame. I have a feeling they probably did some reunion tours, you know, to
They did they re-released the music, and of course they hung the promotion on them being the Brady Bunch singers.
Oh yeah.
So, and you'll notice too in the lead, if you're watching the lead in, you'll notice this is before Florence Henderson put her wig on that she wore throughout the series. So she looked a little different in the lead-in. And Bobby's hair is like jet black. In those checkerboards, and that was completely dyed just to sort of make him match his two brothers and father in the show. Later on, you'll see he reverts back to his original hair color, which is actually red, with no explanation.
That's okay. There's no explanation for a lot of things. What the hell happened to the cat from the first episode? You know, like there are a lot of things that
he ruined that wedding. They killed him.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe that's what they had. They had like a luau like the next weekend, and they ate the cat.
They brought him to Hawaii.
Yeah.
All right. Now
All right. So getting back to a camping, we will go. This is. This one is kind of the boys do have ownership over this because it is a tradition that the boys and their father go out camping and they live off the land. And this time they're bringing the girls along.
And they're not happy about it. They're not happy one bit.
No. Well, so of course, Mike is good with it, but
Mike's okay. Yeah, of course. Mike and Carol are the peacemakers between the kids, but Bobby and Greg and Peter have no interest in the girls going along on this excursion. They think they're going to ruin everything.
Right.
And they kind of do.
They kind of do. They kind of do. But they of course have to go back and forth where Mike is talking to the boys. And, he's saying, okay, well, we need to take them and we need to be nice to them, even though they're girls. And then he's like, well, even when they're girls, it's Greg, even when they're girls, especially if they're girls, like, we can't take them with us, but then of course it cuts immediately to Carol talking to the girls going, we can't sleep in a tent with wild animals. And
referring to the boys.
Yes. Yeah, really.
And then, of course, off screen, you don't see Robert Reed going over to Sherwood Schwartz and saying, why are there wrinkles in this AstroTurf lawn?
Yes. Why do the kids have to mow it?
So they get all their camping gear ready, and they shake off a year's worth of dust, which looks like a lifetime's worth of dust.
No kidding. It made me sneeze just watching that.
So then they head out, and then Alice is kind of in her drill sergeant mode.
Yeah,
right?
She looks like Ranger Rick or something.
Well, I think it's kind of foreshadowing for her sister Emma. Remember when Emma comes?
Yeah.
She's kind of in that character almost.
Yeah, she's got her whistle. She's like, she's ready to go. And she's got the attitude like she's been on all these camping trips and she knows what she's doing. But clearly when she gets there, she has no clue what she's doing either. So.
Right. So they head out. And so for the first time, they leave the studio and they head to a campground, which was actually Franklin Canyon Reservoir in L.A. And interestingly, that's where they filmed the lead-in and a lot of the lake scenes in the Andy Griffith Show. That's the same lake.
Nice. And it's very beautiful. I mean,
the scenery's great.
Yeah. And of course, you pack up the station wagon and, like, I never really understood, like, the logistics of how they fit everybody in the car. Like, I know it's different times you could ride, like, in the back, like, in the hatch and everything.
Yeah, it seems like there's always one or more of the kids facing the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Like, they're way in the back and you see the back of their head or the side of their head, so...
Yeah, because seatbelts were not a thing. Seatbelts were not important.
Oh, no. That was sissy stuff.
That's right.
Just like the chicken that they would later eat in the episode.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
So they filmed it on location, and most of it. Some of the later scenes at night, especially, were back in the studio. But the scenes outside are very nice looking. There was obviously too much wind and outside noise to actually use any of the outside recording that they used. So they did a lot of audio looping. So it's fun to kind of watch the words not quite match what their lips are saying.
And for there to be like some ambient noise 1 second and then the next second it sounds like me and you right now over this podcast.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's funny too because Susan Olsen was saying that scene where let's wait 1 second. I'm getting ahead of myself. So what happens is each of the kids pair off with the opposite sex of their same age and try to go fishing. And the girls, every one of them ruin the fishing portion of the trip somehow. Cindy falls in the lake and whatever. And so,
Jan, Jan lets go
has a
of
meltdown.
Her line. Yeah, it's slimy, so she lets go. I don't really even know what the Peter and Marcia, when they came back, I'm not sure what Peter's gripe was with Marcia, but they just didn't catch anything.
They had no fish. They had nothing to eat, and they blamed it on the girls. So, of course, the girls, led by Carol and Alice, bring out this perfect-looking picnic basket full of fried chicken and cold cuts. And well, let's listen to that section when she brings it out. And pay attention to Mike, too. Mr. Brady, when he says something like anything and everything or something. It's weird.
We're starving now! Yeah!
Well, you'll survive.
Surprise! The girls and I packed this in the car in case of an emergency.
How's that for a brilliant mother?
Hey, Carol, you're a lifesaver. We're starving to death.
Well, we have cold cuts, cheese, and fried chicken. Just name your poison.
Anything and everything.
Dad, no!
Huh?
That's sissy food!
Yeah, what I always find really odd about that is the basket, is huge. But, everything's on plates. Nothing's, in, saran wrap or foil or anything. Everything's just sitting
Nothing's
out
been
there.
jostled.
Yes, by this
9
trip.
people in the car.
And how did they get this? I mean, obviously, no one knew. The boys didn't know that this was part of the trip. How did they not see this huge freaking picnic basket in the car?
And they brought it into the tent somehow as well.
Yeah, but it would have been in the car, so yeah.
So back to the sound effects. What I was saying was Susan Olsen was saying she specifically remembered doing the audio looping for that section, and they actually brought in chicken to the audio session to make it sound realistic. And Maureen McCormick said, I can do it without the chicken. So she simulated the chicken eating just to show that she was above all that.
Okay, but Susan Olsen is the method actor here. Come on.
Right.
God.
And then, so the boys, obviously, at first, they're very resistant to eating the sissy food. And then Mike says, well, I'm eating it. And so then finally they're watching everybody enjoying it. So they dive in wholeheartedly.
Which, let me just point out, if you are a parent and you are responsible for, 6 children and a housekeeper, and you're going out into the forest, it is incredibly irresponsible to not have some food with you.
Right, to just rely on the kids catching fish. But they did.
They did. But yeah, that just, to me, it seemed ridiculous. That he would normally take the boys out without any water or any food. What if?
Or at least Tiger.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't judge. We weren't there. Mm-hmm. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of resolves all that. They all enjoy the food, and then the girls decide that they're going to prank the boys. Just because that's what siblings do.
Before that, though, before they do that, Alice, of course, has an air mattress that she's pumping up. She's putting her curlers in her hair, and she ends up puncturing the air mattress, and they think it's a rattlesnake, and the boys think it's hilarious that the girls were scared, which again shows Alice has absolutely no clue what she's doing.
Yeah. Right. So then the girls craft some sort of cutout of a bear, on a popsicle stick or something, and
it's so realistic looking. I mean,
I know. I see why they fell for it. It was so realistic.
Yeah.
And then they put the shadow of the bear outside the tent, and the boys just freak out as well. And then they end up chasing the girls into their tent, and everything collapses.
And
the tent and everything.
Family
And Susan Olsen was also
togetherness.
upset. Susan was also upset that she wasn't in that scene because the director, Oscar Rudolph, told her, there's a risk of you getting injured and we can't see you anyway. So she felt really left out not being in there.
Aw, darn. Sorry, Cindy.
Sorry,
wow, way to sound like Jan for a moment. Yeah. Have you noticed that this is a trend? That the Brady kids really like to do things with flashlights and, and forced perspective.
UFOs.
Later they'll do that with the ghosts and a UFO. Yeah.
And they do an interesting thing with flashlights and baked beans, which we'll talk about later,
Which
too.
we're going to talk about here in a few minutes.
Yeah. So the wrap up to the episode is Greg setting a precedent by, I think, entering his parents' room for the first time to chat with them while they're in bed.
Come in.
Mom, Dad, could I ask you a question?
Well, sure. What is it, son?
We just had a big meeting downstairs. Peter and Bobby and all the girls. We had lots of fun together on this trip and... Well,
Yeah?
is it okay if we all go every place with you from now on?
Well, certainly, son.
Of course.
Thanks. I'll go tell him.
Aww.
And that wasn't, I guess originally that was not the wrap up gag. It was going to be the boys getting revenge by scaring the girls with a spider. And they actually filmed it and everything. And then at the last minute, I guess they decided to go a different direction.
Right, so they decided to save the spider for the Hawaii episode. So this takes us to our next vacation. It's a slightly more elaborate camping trip to the Grand Canyon. This is season 3, the first 3 episodes in 1971. Now, I did have like a little bit of an issue trying to find some of these episodes because you can get them on CBS All Access, all the seasons, and on Hulu. But for some reason, a few of the vacation ones are missing. So like the Grand Canyon one, I think only the 3rd one is on CBS. I ended up just buying that DVD. So I don't know why, if it's because like they're involving like the Park Service and Kings Island and, you know, Pearl Harbor. I don't know if it's like there's some kind of weird copyright type thing on that.
That's odd.
Or they just still want you to buy the DVDs. I don't know.
Yeah, that's odd. They would only give you less than all of the 3 parts.
Yeah, not sure. But so this first Grand Canyon episode, of course, everybody is waiting impatiently because Mike and Carol are gone. They have this huge surprise, and they come in, and we have a one thing that only happens one time in this entire series. Everybody gathers around the dining table. We actually see the window and the curtains from the living room out to the dining room. It's the only time you ever see that.
And then out to the carport.
Yeah. So they pull back the curtains and, oh, whoa, it's a pop-up camper that is maybe a 4-person camper.
Money well spent, because they never once got in it that we saw anyway.
They never got in it.
It's like they just used it to haul their junk.
And it was never seen again either. So maybe they rented it. I don't know.
And it's funny too. It's funny too that I just noticed when you first see it, they pulled in with the car first, right? So you see the campers behind the car. And then when they go to leave, it's been turned around. So I'm just imagining Mike and all the boys out there trying to guide that into a circle.
Yep.
So that you mentioned how it was a big surprise that he brought that home. That becomes a common motif for all the vacations.
Yes.
After that, that's always a big surprise.
It's always a big surprise. The camping one is the only one that seems to have been planned. But of course, you know, they're instantly like going upstairs and packing clothes and stuff. Like they're leaving like the next day. We're going to go on a major vacation in a week or for a week, and we're going to leave tomorrow, kids. You know, like whatever. But some funny things with this, we do have Jim Backus as a guest star on this episode, or the first 2 episodes. And he also shows up in season 5. He is actually the president of Mike's company.
Looking completely different. Clean shaven.
Yeah, clean shaven and a little more Thurston Howell than Zachariah T. Brown.
Zachariah T. Brown, I noticed too, really... You didn't have to have much imagination to close your eyes and hear Mr. Magoo in that voice.
No.
Especially when he's telling all those tall tales.
Mm-hmm.
He really sounds like him.
Well, I might be able to if I had the right kind of encouragement.
And then something else that was kind of interesting is the Nelson Rockefeller and his family apparently visited the set while this was being filmed.
Right. Which was also the set of the Western TV series Bonanza.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, which what, a lot? That's not a real ghost town?
Cactus Creek, haven't you heard of that?
The girls are packing and they're talking about they're going to take a mule ride down the canyon. Don't tell Alice. But they get in the car, and there should be a Brady Vacation soundtrack album. Because, and I tried to write them all down as we went through. So first we have the Bradys singing "Row, Row, Row Your Boat" in the car.
And "Hail, Hail, the gang's all here," right?
Yeah, we had that. Yeah, as I go through, Clementine, oh my darling Clementine. They sing some stuff around the campfire later. Yeah, there's a whole soundtrack album here, like between these 8 episodes. But they stop at this gas station, and so I posted on Sitcom Kaleidoscope. You remember that Brady Bunch episode where, one of the Sawyers from Texas Chainsaw Massacre lead them 20 miles down a dirt road, and they go into The Hills Have Eyes. Like this is the first, at least the first 2 episodes of this vacation. It's a freaking horror movie. It's a horror movie that doesn't pan out. Like, this is completely like set up for like, hello, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag.
Right.
So they talk to this guy, and he says 20 miles down a dirt road, there's a ghost town. They're in a station wagon with a pop-up camper, and they all decide, hey, let's go camp in this ghost town. Yeah, that guy is like I won't say he's like the harbinger of death, because he doesn't warn them. He's more of like the red herring, like the one who's like, calls his cousin right after they leave and be like, I got you some more of them. They're on their way. And that guy, I don't know if you know who he is. I'm sure.
Hal, yeah.
Yes, I was going to say, I'm sure that's one of the things you wanted to talk about.
Not so much.
Yeah. No, Hal, he basically was in like 1 or 2 episodes of like every sitcom.
Yeah, he's character
at
actor.
The time. Yeah. But then, Hail, Hail, the gang's all here. Okay, so that's track 2 on the CD.
And then too, we didn't mention back in the A Camping We Will Go episode that when they first start to leave, they all have to, they're getting ready to pull out of the driveway, and then suddenly everybody has to go to the bathroom.
Right. And
then
we have
here everybody has to go to the bathroom. It's just a lot of bathroom humor for a show that couldn't show a toilet or what.
Toilet, no kidding. Yeah. Greg has a Super 8 camera. They make this stagecoach robbery movie, and he has Cindy and Jan be dance hall girls and has them flirt with their brothers.
What are you doing, big boy?
Oh, so bad, so bad.
And that scene too is usually cut out of syndication. I don't think for any particular reason other than it's just so unnecessary. But it wasn't until the DVD was released that I think I ever remember even seeing that whole entire scene. Usually it kind of starts and then they call them away to dinner.
The ladies and Mike, they are like getting camp ready, and they've got that camper, but they're still pitching tents because what's the point of having a camper if you're going to sleep in tents? But I guess not everybody could sleep in that camper. Be a tight fit.
Yeah, they just pitch their tents like right in the middle of the
street. In the middle of the road.
And never use them because they leave. Well, we'll get to that, but they leave before nightfall, so there was like no point of it in the first place.
But nice continuity. Those are the same tents they used in the camping episode. Those kind of green canvasy tents. I mean, they may not be the exact ones, but they look exactly like that.
Well, if they are the exact same, it's probably because they're the only ones in the prop department, not because they put any effort into it.
They were like in Sherwood Schwartz's garage.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so I have always had a little bit of a problem with our guy, Zachariah T. Brown, because he starts, I mean, I know he's telling tall tales, but he starts talking about, you know, my granddaddy built this town on the, you know, based on the gold rush, blah, blah, blah. But then he's like pointing things out and talking like he was involved. Like, here's the saloon where we used to whoop it up. If you look at the timeline here, I mean, Jim Backus was born in 1913. Pretty sure that the gold rush was done by then.
He looked pretty haggard. He could have been, who knows?
You don't really know.
Or there could have been some Fountain of Youth waters on that island he was on for 3 years, too.
That's true. But yeah, so he lures them in by telling them that Jesse James was there. Of course, this is where Mr. Brady is skeptical. I don't think Jesse James was ever in this part of the country. So he wants to prove it to them because he's carved his name in the wall in the jail. Red flag.
Now just stand back further. Further.
No. Look behind the cot. It's
now everybody push the cot in.
Yeah.
Slam.
Yeah.
They're done.
What are you doing? Well, I'm gonna eat you for dinner. Basically, would be the usual 1971 answer. But yeah. So they get stuck in the cell, and I will say that when I was a kid, this really freaked me out. Like I felt the tension. And if you think about it, you're there, like you have 9 people stuck. Nobody knows where you are except for the weird guy from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, like nobody knows where you are. I mean, like that's a really dire situation.
And then even you see Mr. Brady, he kind of keeps a cool head and he thinks, oh, I can pull this bar down. It's just rust at this point.
Yeah.
And you see him just like vigilantly shaking it and doesn't budge an inch. And
yeah. Because at first, he's very like, oh, this is, rickety, and old. But no, it's not, man. It's the Sherwood Schwartz
Bonanza.
Yes. Bobby spots the key.
Right, they do get out.
So they do get out. So they use their shoes. They play this little game, and they're all like really excited and like they're cheering on Dad as he's trying to get the key. But they get out. But then he's taken the car, and they're completely stranded.
They're stranded.
Food, no water, no nothing. The ending credits are playing. Don't miss part 2 of the exciting Brady Bunch. Grand Canyon Adventure, the same time next week.
But it's interesting that they really did leave. Every episode is a cliffhanger, and they leave the family in peril. Every one of the 2-parters or 3-parters. At the end of each episode, the family is in some sort of distress.
Yeah,
and you don't know how they're going to get out of it.
And I'm just going to set this out here right now. After this, I don't know why the Bradys ever left California anyway. This is a nightmarish vacation. I mean, they have all this stuff happen to them, but then in the end, they're all like, oh, yay, that was so fun. You remember when we almost died? Like 3 times? They're a little bit too good-natured.
So then we tune back in the next week.
Grand Canyon or bust.
And we do a quick, Carol does a quick synopsis of the events that led them up to that point with her basically back with everyone except for Mike and Peter who have left out to go walk. I don't know why they didn't take Zechariah's mule, but they went and they walked to the highway to try to flag down a car. And, so the other episode would end with her thinking, what's going to become of us?
Yes, and it's her like internal voice. She's like looking around concerned.
Our mistake was stopping in this ghost town and meeting that old prospector. He seemed harmless enough.
Really? Because I don't think he seemed harmless. But yeah, so everybody but Peter and Mike are there trying to kind of make the best of things.
And they're coming up with these. They come up with several of their most harebrained ideas of how to get out of there, starting with etching the word help into the ground, the hard dirt. which could roughly be seen by one of the roofs nearby. You know, a plane is never going to spot anything like that. And the whole thing builds up to the joke where they're trying to really carve this word into the dirt road, and they can't do it with sticks. So they decide they're going to try to use the mule, which is very stubborn. So it ends up being that Alice pulls the plow to try to get this word written in the dirt.
Alice is always a mule, man. So then they try to pump water out of a pump, and it just pumps out dust. Although Carol did give the boys canteens before they went out. Maybe that was the last of the water. I don't know.
Did you notice in the first part of this trilogy, when they're trying to figure out what the surprise is, Alice says something like, "Don't keep pumping me. The wells run dry."
Oh yeah. Ooh, there's foreshadowing
There's
for
some
you.
deep meaning behind all this.
And then, you know what? This part just, it actually made me, I mean, I laugh at all this stuff, but this made me laugh. Like, I thought this was cute because there's a phone and Greg is like, oh, let's try the phone, you know, and he kind of wires it back together and he gets, you know, he gets it working and it's ringing, but of course it's Cindy in another one of the buildings. And they're like, help, help, we're stuck in this ghost town. And when Cindy's like, oh, really?
So are we.
It's so cute.
It is funny. I almost wish they didn't reveal that it was Cindy, like that you just saw Greg talking to someone. Oh, I've got someone. And then all of a sudden it shows Cindy.
And then show Cindy. Yeah, that would have been.
But as it was, she actually is ambling down the street and hears a phone ringing. So, of course, she goes in and answers it.
Yeah. But then, of course, because it's the Brady Bunch, here comes the car. And it's Mike and Peter and Zachariah T. Brown. They got the camper, they got the car. And he was just going into town so that he could file his claim and that they couldn't take away his gold. He was to kind of come back and get him, of course. And, of course, Mike is just good-natured about it.
Yeah, he defends him. That's right, honey. I saw he was on his way back, so
yeah,
it was good. But, of course, you know, Mr. Brown then offers to share the gold with them and hands Mrs. Brady a piece of paper with an X on it.
X on it, yeah. So, oh well. But they get back in the car again. Like you said, they didn't use the tents, of course. And then they start singing Clementine, Oh My Darling, track 3 on my Brady Bunch mix. By the way, and this may have come out probably during the variety show time, but I don't think so because Jan was on the cover. But I had a record when I was little of the Brady Bunch singing various songs. The one I really remember them singing is American Pie, the Don McLean song.
I think they had 4 albums altogether.
Yeah. But this was definitely during the run of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. They after they began the music aspect of their career on the show, they started doing actual tours and singing. So they were cranking out albums. They had a Christmas album and at least 3 others.
Yeah, I don't remember the Christmas album. And again, this was not when I was a kid. Like, this was, like, I wasn't even born when the show ran. It was kind of like a very big part of my childhood. Like, obviously, when the show was on, somebody in my family had bought it.
Yep, they're actual real LP albums, and they're out on CD. They're kind of rare now, but...
Man, I wish I still had that. Okay, and then...
So it's goodbye. It was goodbye Cactus Creek, or goodbye Ghost Town. Hello Grand Canyon. Peter has a pretty good joke where they're overlooking the Grand Canyon.
Hey, look, Dad, there's water down there.
Sure.
That's the Colorado River. That's what dug this whole canyon.
Well, just think of it. Thousands of years of constantly running water did all that.
Wow. No wonder you don't like us to leave the water faucets dripping.
I think that's a good joke. I thought that was a good joke.
Mike explains to Alice where they are, and I'm going to say this wrong, but Yatahay
flats.
Yatahay. Okay, and Alice says,
Yata who?
Yatahay, Indian word, means hello or welcome.
Oh, that's good to know. It'll come in handy if I happen to bump into Tonto.
Okay, so if that's not an inside joke, as well as foreshadowing, I don't know what is.
Right.
And the Brady Bunch wasn't usually clever at doing things like that. But this is one of my favorites. And you and I were both discussing that of all the hundreds of times we've seen this episode, and we, at least I knew that was the real Tonto, Jay Silverheels, that will show up later. I never connected this line.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, Chief Eagle Cloud he played Tonto in The Lone Ranger.
And she is the one that runs into him. Yes. But that's in the next episode, so we'll talk more about that. But
yeah. But yes, that is a funny and almost, maybe it was so clever that we didn't catch it. You know what I mean?
And I've never heard anyone ever mention it either. You're not looking for that
depth. No. So there you go, guys. There's your trivia for this one. Big time.
So they have some very nice, majestic looks at the Grand Canyon.
Yes.
And then they decide they're going to go down into it. Oh.
Yeah, Bobby basically like climbs on the stinking railing, which is another thing that just gave me a heart attack when I was a kid. We'll talk about this.
That's one of my
later,
jokes. I used to do that kind of thing.
Oh, but see, we'll talk about that because I'm sure you did that at Kings Island. Like when you go up to the Eiffel Tower, it used to scare the crap out of me when people would walk up to the edge. Oh, I was a weenie ass kid. I still am, but I really don't like heights. But they're gonna camp at the bottom, and they go on the mule ride. And obviously, like it's really beautiful. You know, I mean, it's the Grand Canyon. Come on, you know, they do some nice shots so that not all of it's green screened.
I don't think there are any green screens though.
Not in this one.
No.
But Hawaii's got some.
But obviously, once they get down into the Grand Canyon, they're not in the Grand Canyon anymore.
Grand Canyon, right? Yeah. They're back in California.
Yeah.
So they take the mule down. We've got some comedy because, of course, you know, Alice is not very steady and stable in there. They get to the bottom, and Bobby and Cindy go off to like look around, and they find this Native American boy in this very colorful 1970s lime green native clothing. and I have here written down, the most boring 10 minutes in Brady history, maybe television history, which we opened the show with. Bobby!
That's, after they get lost, right?
Yeah, because they go and they meet Jimmy, but then they realize they need to get back to camp, and they have no idea where they're at. Yeah, so everybody walks around just yelling their names for like 10 minutes, and it even goes into the next episode.
There are a couple things I want. If you're watching the episode, the next time you watch it, actually get it out and watch it. I'm telling you to, because you're in quarantine anyway right now. But there's a couple things to look for. For one thing, when Mike is setting up the tent when he's down in the Grand Canyon, watch him as he's hammering with this sort of hammer on one side, axe on the other, and he misses the spike and hits his hand. And it's not. But it's funny because it's clearly a mistake, but yet they threw in a laugh track on top of it. So
yes, but you notice there was a chunk of this where
hand?
Once they were in the canyon. Yeah, no kidding. There was a chunk of this, I have it written down, that when they were down in the canyon, there was no laugh track for a very long time. Like, even though they made a couple jokes, it felt really weird to not have the laugh track.
And of course, they're back to looping the dialogue in, so there's really no ambient sounds either. So,
right, that's true.
And then also look for Cindy's cold sore on her lip, of course. And then Mike's got a lot of nipple sweat. I don't know why.
Yes, I noticed that big time on this one. I was like, man, he shouldn't be wearing a baby blue shirt. Woof.
And then, like you said, so Cindy and Bobby try to follow Jimmy Pacaya, the wannabe astronaut, back to his home, and they lose him, and then they get lost themselves. So that's how it ends. But
again, in an incredibly perilous situation. You have two children lost in the middle of the freaking desert.
And Mike is so upset about it that he yells at the other kids. You remember that? Didn't I tell you, kids, not to go wandering off? He's saying that to the ones that didn't wander off.
Yeah.
And the one failure on the part of Mike Brady. He's normally a perfect dad, but that was his one slip up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, aside from the one episode where he gets like mad drunk and like beats the crap out of Peter, but you know, that's a lost episode, right?
And it was Oliver.
That's right.
He don't mess with his own offspring.
Yeah. So we go back to the next episode, the Brady Braves, which is the third episode, and we get some more Bobby, Cindy, and we have another one of these like voiceover recaps about, you know, basically, well, we got stranded in jail and that really sucked, but then everything was great and now we lost our kids and now everything's bad again, you know, ...
And I do have to mention that, so this episode aired on October 1st, 1971. And do you know what else was going on that day?
No.
Walt Disney World was opening its gates for the first time.
Oh, man.
On that very day. And then the next day, something even better happened. I was born.
Oh,
yeah.
there
Well, better
you
for
go.
me.
Yeah. I don't know. Walt Disney World, you know. I don't know. If I had to weigh between do I want Walt Disney World or do I want Brad Farrell? I mean, it's a tough one.
If there was no Disney World, I don't know if I would have wanted to be here. So
that is true. That is true. I kind of got wistful the other day because I can't remember what it was. It was like Disney put out like a 10-hour track of just the like ambient sounds from the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
For people, like just the kind of the rain and the storms or whatever. And I was like, oh. And you see pictures of like, you know, you see pictures of like LA and no cars on the freeway, or Atlanta and no cars. And it's like, yeah, it's a little creepy. You see overhead pictures of Disney World without anybody there. It just makes you want to cry. Just
like that overhead shot of Bobby and Cindy roaming around, having no idea where they're at.
Exactly. They're in the middle of the coronavirus. Something that I do want to like say, you had said that I need to watch this. I'm in quarantine anyway, so watch it. This actually came about because I was binging the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch is like a comfort for me. It is like my whoopee. And it's something that I put on when I just kind of like, I need like that boost, like a mood boost. And so I had been watching a lot of this stuff, and I've probably gone through, I would say 2/3 of the season, like twice now.
It's like visiting with family, really.
Yeah.
It is.
And I will say too, and we are both from the Midwest. I'm from Indianapolis and Brad is from Cincinnati. And watching the Kings Island episode made me incredibly happy because that's a place where I went most summers. That's where we went on vacation. And so it gave me like this really nice like serotonin boost. So thank you, Brady's. Okay,
You're welcome.
that was my I heart the Brady Bunch moment. And yeah, I'll probably pop that episode back in right when we're done with this. So we have a lot of what would now be called cultural appropriation in these episodes. Back then it was just a joke. So when Bobby saw Jimmy Piccata, he says, "How?" And Jimmy's like, "What?"
How what?
Yeah. Are you a real Indian? And this is where the laugh track comes back. I did have this. So
but this is why Jimmy Piccata has run away from home. And I don't know I don't know if there was ever any Indian tribes based in the the basin of the Grand
bottom
Canyon.
of the freaking canyon. Does anybody live there?
I don't know. I don't want to go out on a limb and say there wasn't, because maybe there was, but I don't think in the modern day, in the last 50 years, there have been.
I would doubt it, but that's okay. But yeah, they are like referring to themselves as pale faces and stuff. And Jimmy's like, "Well, you cut it out with the pale face stuff, whatever." Because Jimmy is like, he just wants to be a modern kid. That's the other thing too. I don't think there's probably like schools or electricity or anything in the bottom of the canyon. So I highly doubt that that's where he lived. But we'll have to research
he definitely has the flimsiest excuse ever for running away. He lives with his grandfather, whom he loves and adores, but he wants to be an astronaut and swoosh to the stars. And he's
Right.
afraid that his grandfather's not going to understand that. Has
Right.
he talked to his grandfather about it?
He hasn't even told his grandfather. No, hasn't even brought it up. But yeah, so he's gonna run away and live off the land, live in the desert, and that's really gonna get him to his goals. Shouldn't he be trying to get up out of the canyon and back to the city if he wants to be an astronaut?
Yeah, that's the moral of the story. When you want to swoosh to the stars, don't start at the bottom of a canyon.
Exactly.
I want that on my grave. I don't know why. I like it.
I do like that. I do like that. And only a few people would get it. But Jimmy is hungry. Okay, he's been out there for a few days. And so the kids decide they're going to help him out. And then...
And I have to say, up until now, when I watched the camping episode and saw him eating the chicken and the lunch meat, I wanted some. When I saw even Zechariah eating the chicken in the ghost town, I wanted some. I did not want these hot dogs that they fed Jimmy Pitaya. They looked uncooked.
In their pockets.
And they put them in their pockets. And then they were going to bring him baked beans.
Yes.
So thankfully they didn't put those in their pockets, but they put them inside. They took the batteries out of a flashlight and filled them with that.
Okay, and I told you that I would tell you my story here. I was an incredibly, obviously I was a weenie child, but I also was incredibly literal about everything. Like when I was a kid, I would take everything at face value.
A weenie child, like you liked hot dogs?
Out of my pockets. No, yeah, but
Or you were just happy to see whoever.
Yeah,
Sorry.
That's right. But I actually thought that was like something you did when you went camping, is that you used like your flashlight for baked beans.
So you did this?
No, I
you
never
just
went
thought that.
camping, but I thought that's like that. I didn't realize it was supposed to be funny. I thought that's something that that somebody would do. Like it was a normal camping thing.
If I could go back in time, I would make sure that someone took you camping because I would want to see that you actually filled the family flashlight with baked beans.
Like I never did it because I never went camping, but I thought that's what people did. So
I had nightmares about this.
that
my food was being served in a flashlight.
Flashlight, yeah.
And
There's,
also,
like,
what
batteries
in the
leaked
world
out
did
of
you
them.
look at so when they took the uncooked hot dogs off their plate, they were kind of sitting on these buns that had just been smashed to smithereens.
Yeah, this was not a good dinner. This was not one of Alice's.
And she managed this perfect basket full of food out of nowhere, but she can't even serve cooked hot dogs on undestroyed buns. I'd had it by that time.
Of course, we have a campfire, and we have the next tracks on my mix. So I don't know what this one song is called. It's also in Friday the 13th. Is it Down in the Valley?
I think it's just Down in the Valley, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know what that's called. And then they also sing Home on the Range. So we got two more Brady camping hits.
Right. And then they meet. So let's go to are we ready for the clip where Alice does run into Jay Silverheels? Because I think he is one of the coolest guests they ever had on the show.
Yes.
You didn't see much of him after the Lone Ranger, so it was awesome to see him in this.
Yatahay.
Yatahay. Kawase Yagungwa. Ii Unkan Hanwe. Kawase Ranakwa.
Well, I'm afraid you took the advanced course.
We didn't mention that right before that, Jimmy, they actually found out what was going on, and Jimmy came into their camp. And Mr. Brady gave Jimmy his famous Mr. Brady talk. So we find out that it works not just with his own children, but that his talks are perfect with other children. He really should have been like a child psychologist.
And turns out Jay Silverheels, as grandfather, was perfectly okay with Jimmy wanting to swoosh to the stars.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, all's well that ends well. Jimmy's back. He's going to be an astronaut. And they all get invited to become part of the tribe.
And they all, And so if there's one surefire way of eating up time in a Brady Bunch for padding an episode, It's the fact that each kid can be shown doing whatever the activity is. So in this case, they all received an honorary Indian name. But Peter didn't like either of his names, and he said he'd get back to him, and he never did. So I don't think Peter...
I know.
He didn't like Middle Buffalo or Sleeping Lizard.
No. And then, of course, Alice is Squaw in Waiting.
Squaw in Waiting, yeah.
Yes.
Don't make the wait too long.
Yeah. So, yeah, a few of them you could tell he was phoning it in because he had no idea who most of them were, so...
Little Bear Who Loses Way and Wandering Blossom. Those were the two little ones.
Those are really the ones he knew, yeah. So that's it. So, hey, look, everybody, we had a great vacation. Didn't we have a good time? Can we just stop at the canyon one more time?
Stop one more time and look at the canyon, coincidentally enough, wearing the exact same clothes that they were wearing when they first saw the canyon several days earlier. Did you notice that?
Yes, but I do want to...
I hear you flipping through your notes. You've got something.
This might be a quarantine activity for me. And I actually said this the other night. In each season, they have very few changes of clothes, at least the kids. Like, many of the episodes, like, the kids will be wearing the same shirt. And I don't know if that was, like, just a budgetary thing, if they filmed a lot of stuff at the same time, or if it was just that was, like, a sign of the times. I mean, they only had, like, each of them had, like, a drawer and, like, 2 feet of closet space. They couldn't have had that many clothes. But there was a lot of repeat on the Brady kids' clothing.
Yeah, and think about Gilligan's Island. They theoretically only had one pair of clothes, but the house changed every day. Why
anyone would even have an overnight bag or anything on that tour is beyond me. But that's a whole other Sherwood Schwartz thing, and we will actually bring up Gilligan's Island on the next vacation.
We will. Which is, so this 3-parter worked so well that they decide to open their 4th season, now with a new lead-in, with the same premise, basically. That they're
right, same exact thing. 3 episodes on vacation.
3 episodes on vacation, and just kind of their adventures. A couple major plot points, and that's it. And other than that, a lot of it's just scenery and comedy and silliness and all that. So
when you say plot points, no, we have further danger.
Yeah, exactly. Moments of peril.
Gosh. Yes, many moments of peril.
But you think, like, the first half of the first episode and the last half of the 3rd episode, there's really no plot whatsoever. They're just kind of looking around.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the first one was called Hawaii Bound, and that aired on September 22nd, 1972, directed by Jack Arnold, who did 15 episodes of The Brady Bunch. And I don't know if we mentioned Oscar Randolph did both. He was the director of both the camping episode and the Grand Canyon trilogy. So now we have a different director at the helm. So the Brady kids were the real life actors that were the Brady kids were very excited about this episode because so far they had gone to the Grand Canyon, which wasn't that far from where they lived. And obviously the camping was just in their own backyard anyway. But this one was the first major trip. So
this was like budget, like they stayed in a nice resort. They obviously got to, they all by the end have suntans and sunburns, and they obviously had a good time while they were there.
And Barry Williams, who was Greg, found out they were going to use a stuntman to do the surfing shots of him, and he was a California surfer, and he pleaded with them to let him do his own surfing in the show, and they actually even sent him a week early so he could practice surfing. So he really milked it. He took his whole family and they went a week early. Yeah, that's why he's a little bit more tan.
He probably spent most of his time on the beach trying to pick up chicks anyway, but
that's how he spent the whole episode too.
That's really
He wanted to see those bikinis. When are we going to get to the bikinis? That was his.
Yeah. And to think that he comes from Southern California, are the girls really that, the beach is that much hotter, the girls that much hotter in Hawaii,
Right.
I guess vacation booty is a little bit different though than your own homegrown.
But in real
flavor.
life, this was the episode, or this time period, actually in Hawaii, was the first time the real Barry Williams kissed the real Maureen McCormick when they were walking on the
yes,
beach.
yes.
So there was some romance in the air there too.
Yeah. Well.
So we start this episode. We're back with the same premise that we were in the last episode with the surprise. This time, though, they don't know that there's a surprise coming. Mike just brings home a box wrapped up as like it looks like a gift, and everybody's just super curious. And he gives one hint. Do you remember the hint? It has something to do with water. And they said, "In that box, water?" So they open it up, and it's airline tickets to Hawaii.
Woo-woo.
So no sooner did they say it, but they're on a plane and they're arriving in Honolulu and heading over to the Sheraton Waikiki, which was a hotel resort that had been there for about a year and is still there. And you can still go to Waikiki area of Honolulu and see the same hotel. And it looks pretty much the same, at least on the exterior shots.
Now, one thing to note here is where we start Mike never being able to have time away from work, because this, of course, it's a business trip. And he has to work the whole time. And in the next vacation, they are there because it's a business trip and he has to work the whole time.
Right. This isn't more of a vacation for the rest of the family, not him. Although he does make a comment like, I don't know, he comes home at noon, he says, "My day's done and I'm hitting the pool. What a great day of work," or something.
Yeah.
So he did get to enjoy it at least. So for the very first half of this episode, is basically one of the guys, his name is David, who works at the construction site that Mike is there to oversee, kind of takes the whole family on a tour of the island. So they see some of the actual real locations that you might see if you were a tourist, like the blowhole that Mike says is more like Old Faithful Hawaiian style.
Yeah.
And then the Pu'u'o'alaka'a, which Mike says we'll just call it Lookout Point. And the statue of King Kamehameha, whatever. Yeah. I can't say any of those words.
Yeah.
And then they took like this ride on like an outrigger out on the ocean, and and in real life they actually ended up capsizing it because they hit some big wave, and then they got sideswiped by the camera crew and knocked it over, and a couple of them fell out of the boat, I guess.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and then they had to film it again. Then they get to Pearl Harbor, which is probably the most solemn 2 minutes of Brady Bunch you'll ever see.
Yes.
The music all of a sudden drops in tone. And it's, sad music. And of course, the dialogue is looped again. So you don't even hear any background sounds. You just hear Mike sort of reading the plaque in honor of the fallen.
And we should also mention that the music, basically the background music, aside from that, is like the normal Brady music that we hear, but with a Hawaiian flair. Right.
Kind of like in the Grand Canyon, you hear the Brady music with sort of a Western flair. So I really, that's what I would love to hear, if anybody's listening that has any access to this, would be the music cues from the Brady Bunch, because you don't realize how well you know them until you really separate them out and listen to them. You say, "Oh, I know that one. I know that one. I know that one."
Yeah, I can hear it in my head as we're talking about this. Like I hear the opening, where they, kind of when they're going on their sightseeing tour, like the way that all that sounds,
Yeah. And then there's a nice cameo appearance from the Hawaiian singer Don Ho.
Which is my one disappointment. This is the one episode that I could not find on Hulu or on CBS All Access, and the DVD, there was one of the season 4 episode or DVD seasons available on Amazon, and I wasn't going to be able to get it for like 3 weeks. So this is the one episode that I didn't watch. Of course, I've seen it a million times, and that's one of my favorite parts. I love it when they meet Don Ho.
And they sing that sweet little ditty. What was it called? Sweet Someone, I think.
Yeah, I have
on
no
the
idea.
and they play the ukulele, and he's got his he had a singing partner too, at least that he was performing with there in the at the Polynesian resort or whatever, Sam Kapu. And for some reason Sam doesn't get any credit in the credits. Don Ho does, but the other guy that's singing with him doesn't. So and then also we hear Dave. Let's listen to this, because this sort of is what sets the whole plot in motion. This is Dave's version of the tale of Pearl Harbor being cursed.
It's a story about Pearl Harbor most people don't know.
What kind of story?
Well, way back when they first started to build all this, an old island chief warned them against it. See, the islanders believed that this was the home of the Shark Queen god.
Shark Queen god?
One of the strongest of the island gods. The chief told them that this place was taboo, and if they built here, evil things would happen.
What kind of evil things?
Well, when they finished building the first dry dock, it collapsed and sank into the sea. No one could ever explain how it happened.
Wow, then what?
Well, then they started building again, and the chief warned them again.
Did they listen to him this time?
Nope. Nothing happened. Until the attack in 1941.
We also should mention Dave or David, whatever his name is. He is an islander. Like, he is actually Hawaiian.
He's played by Patrick Adiarte, I guess is how you say it. And he was in MASH. He had a recurring role as a character named Ho John in 7 episodes. So I always thought that was funny that Ho John was there with Don Ho. So that's his version of why the area was cursed. And that sort of finally we get into the plot where Bobby and Peter go with Mike to the construction site, and they find this little tiki idol that has been unearthed by the construction workers.
The Bobby Brady magic tiki.
And Bobby thinks it's a good luck charm.
Right. Which, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? But little do they know something that we know, because we overheard the construction workers tell the actual tale. There was an old islander that works on the construction site named Mr. Hanalei, who he went by the nickname Lippy Espinda, and he is definitely a local actor in Hawaii, because he's in the only other credits he really has is some episodes of Hawaii Five-0. So he obviously lives there. And they pulled him in for this episode. So after Don Ho and Sam Kapu sing the song to Bobby and Cindy, Bobby gets his first piece of bad luck. Do you remember that? What happens? He sits on his ukulele and smashes it.
But they don't really consider it, like in the recaps and things, that's not considered as bad luck, but yeah.
But that's the start of it.
Yeah, that's the start, man.
And then for the rest of this episode, we're just seeing a couple other incidences where there's a wall hanging that's in the hotel room almost falls off and hits, or it does fall off and it almost hits Bobby. And then
which, have you ever I mean, I know it's a different time, but like, have you ever tried to take something off the wall at a hotel?
I try it every time I go to a hotel. I try to remove everything I can from the walls.
Yeah, but maybe, but usually it's like all bolted down. But
yeah, and that incidentally, that it was really well done, because what happens is Greg gets irritated at Bobby or something, throws a pillow at him, and it hits this big sort of metal leaf looking thing on the wall, and it falls, and it really does almost hit Bobby. And I was watching, I was like, that was really actually executed very well. This all one shot.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was probably made out of something very lightweight that wouldn't have hurt him, but still, the way they did it, it did work out really well.
Yeah, and then, of course, so the girls have a hula lesson, which that area where they're actually doing the hula lesson is at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. It's at a different hotel, but that sort of grassy area where they were doing that is still there that you can visit. And that's where Alice, at that point, Alice has possession of the tiki because Bobby dropped it in the hallway and she picked it up. And she hurts her back while she's got possession of the tiki. And then we come to the big climax. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
So Greg has entered the
Greg.
surfing contest that Dave is judging. So all of the work that Barry
Conflict
Williams did.
of interest.
Yeah, precisely. All the work that Greg did, Barry Williams did the week before pays off. So he gets to show off some of his surfing skills. And he does a great job for a while, and the whole family's there to watch him. And then the camera captures a real life wipeout that happened to Barry Williams, where he actually did get hurt. And he said he almost went face first into that coral that's sticking up. Because whenever I watched that, before I knew the background, I always thought that really does look dangerous.
It does look, yes.
Mostly because there's a bunch of coral sticking up, which appears to be rock, and that's where he falls. And Barry Williams said that that was an actual real fall, and his head was headed directly for the coral, but at the last minute, another wave took him another direction. But he cut up his foot really bad when he actually hit that coral.
Right, and we should mention that the reason that this happened was not because Greg was a bad surfer. It was because Bobby gave him the tiki to wear as good luck.
For good luck, yeah. Didn't go that way.
Man.
No. So for a while, we don't even see Greg in the water at all. It's like he's underwater. So, of course, the family's frantic. Mr. Brady rushes out. Everybody else rushes out and stops right at the edge of the water. But,
right, except for Dad, yeah.
But and they could have ended it right there and really left a cliffhanger. But they did show Greg sort of floundering above the water before they cut away to next week continue.
That's right.
And you can go, and that's the other. If you ever go to this area, actually, when they're on the beach, you can see the Sheraton Waikiki in the background. So it's right in kind of the same area. But that section is called Queens Beach, and it's still there. And if you watch it, you can see sort of a rock wall going down into the ocean. That's still there and everything. So you can pretty much precisely pinpoint where that all happened.
Cool. I've never been to Hawaii.
I haven't either, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just dreaming.
Someday.
Okay, so then we move on to the second episode in this trilogy. It's called Past the Taboo. Or if Bobby were pronouncing it, it would be the Tubu. And it aired on September 29th, 1972, the following week after the other one. So all of these three-parters aired 1 week after the other. So they go back and do a recap and bring us up to date on what happened. They talk about all the bad luck that the tiki has caused. And like you said, they failed to mention the smash ukulele, which is really, I mean, that's of all the things that happened, that was the biggest damage, right? I mean, Alice's back clearly recovered.
Yeah, and I mean, and Alice, I'm sorry, she probably throws her back out all the time.
Right. I mean, she, all she was doing was just dancing a hula and having her arms over her head.
Yeah.
Come on. Mike drags Greg back up onto the beach, and he doesn't give him mouth to mouth. That would have been interesting, but.
That would have been interesting.
Greg is okay. He supposedly has a cut on the back of his head and everything, but he recovers. And I, always notice Marcia and Jan in those very skimpy bikinis, I must say.
Yeah,
And Marcia looked a little self-conscious. She kind of always has her arms crossed over herself. But Jan's just
didn't notice that.
Yeah. It's kind of like Demi Moore and Blame It on Rio. All right, so that all is resolved, and then they're just kind of...
But he lost the tiki in his accident.
Yes, thank you. He lost the tiki in his accident.
Man.
And Jan, immediately finds it before they leave.
Washed up on shore, even though he was, halfway out in the ocean when he lost it.
Right. Well, even the ocean didn't want it. It spit it back out. It's this is bad luck. So,
now, if you think about it, it's really very important that it came back on shore because, as we find out later, you have to return it to its resting place. So if they never got it back, they could have never returned it, and we would have had tons more bad luck.
Yeah, they have. So yeah, they have one more piece. Once Jan returns the tiki back to Bobby, and then Bobby is told by Dave that he'd already kind of let him in on the bad luck that is facing Pearl Harbor anyway, and Hawaii in general, I guess. But then he tells him specifically that this tiki is bad luck. So Bobby is having second thoughts about keeping it. But before we get to the major thing that sets them all over the edge, we have this nice little interlude of Greg trying to hit on some girl on the beach named Mandy, a really cute
Some
blonde
vacationer.
Yeah. And the thing is, now, obviously, they say she's from the mainland, but her only other credit, this actress, Chris Callow, is in Hawaii Five-0. So we know where she lived. They're not going to fly some, extra all the way over from LA. Hawaii. They just found an actress there that probably just sitting on the beach,
Mm-hmm.
So and then
some surfer girl.
And it's a funny scene because Peter and Bobby completely disrupt what Greg's trying to do.
Yeah, and I would find it hard to believe that the boys couldn't get the hint that he was macking on this girl.
And then somehow they even wind up spreading the suntan lotion on her themselves.
Yeah.
And she's just, this is such great island hospitality. And Greg's been severely cock-blocked.
Yes, exactly. But the ladies are going on a picnic at that point in time. Jan has put the tiki in her bag. Well, they go on a sightseeing tour, another little sightseeing tour, and they go picnicking. And Jan reaches in her bag 10 times so that we can see that there's this gigantic tarantula in her bag.
That's like something out of a horror movie, too, where the person keeps missing getting bitten or whatever.
And by the way, I never questioned this because I've never been to Hawaii. I don't know crap about Hawaii, but tarantulas are actually not found in Hawaii. They just used that because it was something that the audience would recognize as being dangerous.
And then Mr. Brady does say something like, there are no poisonous spiders in Hawaii. So
yeah, because of course he knows. He always does his homework.
He always knows everything.
He does.
So yeah, like you said, Jan has the tiki in her bag, and that's where the tarantula crawls in. And that is the ugliest bag I've ever seen, by the way. Mm-hmm. It looks like Jan wrote her name on it with her foot.
And if you notice, when they're walking around, Cindy has one just like it that says Cindy. I didn't notice if Marcia had one. Yeah, they obviously.
I did not see that.
They probably got them at the hotel, how you get the keychains with your name on it. But Marcia, they couldn't probably find one spelled screwed up with the CIA.
Oh, I was under the impression that they created them themselves. They were so poorly written.
They were bad. They were ugly.
It's like this really ugly yellow on top of that, which looks kind of like the clothes Jan wears normally.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, it was the 70s. That was a popular color.
All rules were off when it came to fashion back then.
Yeah.
So this tiki is passed around so much it's hard to keep track of it. But I guess it's after Jan has it that the tarantula crawls in there. The tarantula stays in there, but then she returns the tiki to Bobby in front of Dave, and then he tells the story about the tiki being bad luck.
Yeah.
Because now Bobby no longer wants it, so he gives it to Peter, and Peter wears it to bed. And that's where he wakes up to the classic scene of the tarantula crawling up his chest. And we have got to listen to just this 15-second clip of Peter's reaction. And Greg's reaction to Peter is equally funny. I don't know. Let's just listen.
Oh, come on, Pete, knock it off.
Get it off me. Please get it off me.
Get what off of you?
Okay, so my question there is when Peter, or when Greg tells Peter, come on, Peter, what does he think he's doing?
Yeah, I don't know. And the sound that Pete makes is
oh.
When it's time to change.
Yeah, right. But,
a little practice there.
But Greg, instead of saying what's wrong, he's just come on, Pete, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What did he think he was doing? That's what I want to know.
Okay, so this is another one that as a kid, this really freaked me out. I mean, it would be terrifying.
It's
and
funny you got into horror movies so heavily with all of the Brady Bunch episodes freaking you out so bad.
I was so scared of everything. But that was part of the reason I think I liked horror. I eventually liked horror is because it was just so intriguing because it scared me. It elicited a response in me. But that was more of my not freaked out, scared freaked out. That was my more old soul, You know, like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You know, oh, you don't want to be on that railing. You know, it was like my mom's nagging voice in the back of my head or something. Like, oh, that spider sure looks bad.
Big and bad and furry.
Woof.
It's a funny scene too when Mr. Brady takes the spider out in the bag and Carol thinks it's a gift for her, and
right, because she's already dropped a hint that there's something in the gift shop that she likes.
Right.
Mr. Brady, of course, can't just kill the spider because that would not be ecologically correct. So he puts it into a gift shop bag that the kids had. And yes, she thinks it's her coral pin.
But I was always disappointed with her reaction because, you know, you thought with everything else, she completely freaks out. When she sees this, she's just kind of like, yuck.
Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a freaking huge tarantula. I would have a more reaction than that, I think.
Yeah, like anyone would, but yeah.
Especially if I was expecting a coral pin.
That's right. That's no coral pin.
So finally the boys have had enough. They want to figure out how to get rid of this curse. Even Greg is starting to buy into it. So they go and talk to Mr. Hanley. Dave directs them to Mr. Hanley. And he tells them some rigmarole story about how they have to return. The tiki was there to protect the burial location of the first king.
Or whatever.
Yeah, to protect the burial grounds, and that they have to return the tiki to the burial ground so the bad luck will go away. So they decide to sneak out at night, have their sisters cover for them, and do this. So they take a bus like far away.
And of course, Mr. Hanley knows exactly the spot.
I
for
did
this
nothing wrong.
Particular tiki.
I did nothing wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
So once they get there, it's like back in this woods, and they have to do like a Hansel and Gretel trail of Bobby's popcorn, because Bobby always eats popcorn, according to Carol.
That's right. Well, he does eat it in the Kings Island episode too. So
they eat everything in that episode.
Yeah, and he eats it at the drive-in. Yeah, I mean,
with the frog.
Sure. Well, I was thinking of the one where he and Greg have the bet, and he ends up having to take him on a date.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, and eats 3 bags of popcorn. So maybe I can get that.
So then they find this cave, which may or may not be what they want. They just find this very enticing looking cave, which it's totally beyond the realm of imagination that no one's found this cave in the past.
Right.
But anyway, so they go inside the cave, and they're followed by this mysterious figure named Vincent Price. And
it's Vincent Price in a tan leisure suit.
And we know it's Vincent Price before the next episode. It would have been better if it was just a mysterious figure. But we do see that it's Vincent Price, although we have no idea what he's doing. But he's not credited as being in the episode. So they should have waited to reveal that. So that's how this one ends, in the final Brady Bunch cliffhanger, with the boys lost in the woods, being stalked by Vincent Price.
Yeah.
Then we come back on the next week. We get another recap. This time they don't mention the ukulele or Alice's back injury. And we've learned that Vincent Price is actually a very despicable character named Hubert Whitehead. And Professor.
Mm-hmm.
Professor or doctor?
Well, he's a doctor, but he is a professor.
Okay. Doctor,
but
professor.
He's got to be I mean, he's Dr. Whitehead, but he is a professor by profession.
Professor of archaeology, and he has found these caves. And he knows there's all kinds of treasure, and he's already found some treasure, but he wants more. He's been, all his life, he's been forgotten, and no one's ever giving him credit. And now he's living in these tiki caves with a giant tiki that he refers to as
Oliver. Yeah. Foreshadowing
of another bad luck tiki that would come into the Brady's lives later on.
Exactly.
So he wants the kids out of there. This is the parallel to Jim Backus's role,
right,
from the other trilogy, where he wants them out of there because he doesn't want them to claim his archaeological treasures.
Yep.
So what's he do? Well, let's listen to this clip and we'll see how he really is probably the most despicable character besides cousin Oliver that was actually in the Brady Bunch.
Museums? I've turned my back on the academic world. There are treasures buried in this cave that are worth a fortune. A fortune! And they're mine. All mine.
You mean you're gonna steal it?
Please. I prefer to think of it as proper compensation for past injustices. That's why you're going to tell me where you found that idol, because wherever it was, there's bound to be more.
We already told you back in Honolulu.
I want the truth. You're somebody's children, aren't you?
Yep.
And we'd like to keep it that way.
Precisely why you're going to tell me where you found that idol.
So at the point that they're having this conversation, the boys are all tied up on Tiki. So he's actually tied him up. He's pointed sharp spears at him, yelled at him, tried to scare him, and probably worst of all, made them watch him eat that plate of beans.
Beans. Again, beans.
These trilogies have a lot of recurring motifs. You know, they're three-parters on location, surprise trips, evil men that the Bradys forgive, a final meal with dancing.
Right.
And beans.
And beans. Yes, and people like family members being lost. Or missing.
One. Very good.
So I had never really looked into this, so I did a little bit of searching on the Vincent Price stuff, because obviously he was still very recognizable. He's still recognizable today. He was definitely recognizable back then. But pretty much this whole storyline was written around him because Sherwood Schwartz was friends with him, and he always tried to get him on Gilligan's Island, and he wouldn't ever do Gilligan's Island. And then he finally agreed to do a show for him, and so he wrote this whole thing with Vincent Price in mind. But Vincent did not go to Hawaii. Everything that he is in California, and in fact, most of this episode is green screened and sound staged.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwaway. It's probably, of all 6 of the trilogy episodes, it's probably the worst one because...
Aside from the last 10 minutes of Bobby and Cindy being yelled for, yeah, I agree.
But at least that's out on location. This is just another cheesy set piece. And it's inconceivable that this cave could have not been discovered. It's huge. And it's above ground. It's not like
They took a bus to it. Yeah, we're talking about an island that's 5 miles wide or something.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, it's completely above ground. It's not like they had to go through some hole in the ground to get into it. And it's got all these torches and giant tikis and everything in it. So it's just, but that's how it ends. Finally, the girls confess to the parents because the boys had told them where they were going, and the girls tell on them finally when it gets to be the point that it's past dinner and they're not home yet. So the parents go and find them in the cave, and Mike does lay into Dr. Whitehead, Professor Whitehead, whatever.
He does.
He lays into him for a second, and then he tells him his sob story, and all of a sudden the Bradys are ready to lend a hand, and and the 5 of them would swear that
if you have 5 witnesses that say that this is yours, really?
He tries to tell him to turn the stuff into a museum, but he's afraid he's not going to get credit. So Mr. Brady says, well, what if all 5 of us are your witnesses? Mm-hmm. So because of that, the episode segues into another luau, which is very, very close parallel to the Indian ceremony.
Which that luau took place on a set from Gilligan's Island.
It looked like it.
Yes, it did. It looked completely like it. I think even as a kid, I thought it looked fake. But we've got the torch throwing guys doing the little fire ceremony. It was pretty cool.
Right. That was a very cool ceremony to give to, 9 people, 10 people.
Right, especially when one of them just tried to kill a few of the other guests.
And Vincent...
But then he's suddenly not despicable. He's getting a whole wing of the museum, and he puts his head down oh shucks, guys.
Now he's wearing saddle shoes, so he's instantly likable because of that. And so they have the ceremony, and like we had sort of mentioned before, everybody gets to blow the horn of brotherhood, except for him. He doesn't even get to blow.
Yeah, not sure why.
Mr. Whitehead. He's left out again.
Yeah. He was right. Do you think that Mr. Brady is the one who gets to design the museum wing?
That would have been a good fourth part.
Mm-hmm.
Keep him there in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the episode, that's how it kind of ends. And then,
what? One thing that we didn't say was when the parents came in and like when they were like done being like okay with Dr. Whitehead, he was like, "Did you hear that, Oliver? Did you hear that, Oliver?" And like the Bradys are like, "What?" And like Bobby's like, "Oh, that's just Oliver."
Yeah, and yet they still help him. So they do one wrap-up scene where they're leaving the hotel room, and they do bring back a little bit of talk about the tiki, the bad luck tiki, and Mr. Brady's still trying to convince them that there's no such thing as bad luck.
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad luck.
So while Mr. Brady's shutting his suitcase, he breaks his sandal in half accidentally and says, "Oh, bad luck." And Bobby said, "No, that was good luck." And Mr. Brady says, "How so?" And Bobby says, "Your foot could have been in it." Dun, 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 dun. And then we just see this plane flying back to. That's when Hawaii just said, "Get the hell out of here."
That's right. Get on that Pan Am flight. Get the hell out of here. But you know what? I think that I like the Hawaii one better than the Grand Canyon. In general, I think because it's like a little more, I don't know, it's more colorful and.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun, especially the first two episodes. It just goes downhill. The third one's just kind of a clunker, but the first two are really good. It makes sense when you do hear
that all of it was written around Vincent Price.
Yeah, that if it's a vehicle for him, I can understand it somewhat. But,
yeah.
So 3 vacations down, 1 to go.
1 to go, and this is the one that I said is probably near and dear to Brad as it is to me. The Cincinnati Kids from season 5, the last season, episode 11, pre-Oliver, thankfully. Mr. Brady, of course, again, comes home with a surprise that he has been asked to make some plans for a new amusement park in Cincinnati, and everybody's going. Well, first he even is just, they're all like, "Oh." He's like, "Oh, we're all going." "Oh, okay." Like, so
yeah, they're like, "We've been to Hawaii, we've been to the Grand Canyon, and why are we supposed to be excited about Cincinnati?"
Not going Cincinnati, Ohio? Okay, we're going to Ohio. So this is another one of the iterations of the opening, and this bugs me so bad. It bugged me when I was a kid. It bugs me. I even still complained about it when I watched season 5. And that is that in the opening, Cindy now has braids, not curls. She wears curls in some of the episodes, like with her hair kind of down, but like the front of it kind of pulled back and curled. They could have very easily used that hairstyle in the opening so that it still went.
Or they could have just changed the lyrics to "the youngest one in braids."
Well, but they'd have to change the line before it. We need rhyme, you know. But so this was 1973. And Kings Island, which is the park, they don't ever actually say it by name. It opened the year before, 1972. There was an episode of The Partridge Family that year that they visited. And also, it was the home of the Banana Splits. So you will see them very often in this. And Hanna-Barbera had a stake in the park, and so you'll see a lot of Hanna-Barbera things in here. Of course, they don't mention any of those things by name, but they still show them.
Except for kind of Yogi Bear. I think they might have said Yogi Bear.
They didn't say Yogi Bear. They just said the bear poster. But then when they unfurled it, it's clearly Yogi Bear. It said Hanna-Barbera. You know, and there were a few times where they showed like the log ride. They showed the front of the logs would have the Kings Island logo on them and stuff. I mean, they weren't hiding it per se, but they weren't mentioning anything as a quote unquote brand name.
And it's kind of bizarre to me that was the case, because the episode cost like $230,000 to do, and Kings Island paid for half of it.
Yeah, I mean, this was a huge promo for them. Yeah,
and they publicized it in the local papers. In fact, my dad remembered when it was in the paper, and he went back in the newspaper archives and found the article. So I think I've actually had posted it on the sitcom Kaleidoscope, but I may repost it.
But maybe that's it. Is that since it was in Ohio, they didn't figure that they were going to get a whole lot of tourism from other states, so maybe they thought they could just promote it as Kings Island there in Ohio.
Yeah, but at the time it was huge. I mean, it was like I'd mentioned how Disney World opened in 1971, and this one opening the following year was kind of the pathway to all these amusement parks. So at the time, it was sort of one of a kind.
Yeah, so Kings Island is a huge amusement park now. Back then, there weren't really amusement parks aside from like California, Florida. I mean, we didn't have crap in the Midwest. And this was originally like a Coney Island boardwalk type thing on the Ohio River. And it got flooded repeatedly. And so they basically bought this land that was like further inland on the outskirts of Cincinnati, relocated the boardwalk type stuff and all the rides. They built Enchanted World.
Voyage.
That's right. Which was like a $2 million dark ride. That's still there. It's been 2 or 3 different things since then. And they created Kings Island. What really kills me is even so many years later, like this area is still pretty much the same. I mean, the park has expanded a ton, but this part is now called Rivertown, like the Coney Island part. And then the kids part was Hanna-Barbera Land, and it's been Nickelodeon and everything else since then. But that Rivertown area still looks a lot like it did there.
Especially, that log ride that they ride. So.
Yes.
But so Paramount Studios Screen Gems, who are the ones that actually produced The Partridge Family and The Brady Bunch, they were major shareholders in Taft Productions. And Taft Productions owned Kings Island and owned Hanna-Barbera. So that's how they're sort of all related.
The quote-unquote what Marge ends up calling animals, but like the mascot things, those are actually banana splits. There's Elise, Drooper, and Fleagle, and Bingo, I think, that I saw. So
and then the Hair Bear.
Yeah.
That was the one.
Yes.
Lloyd Schwartz.
The red, is that the red?
The red
one,
with the
right?
curly hair. That
Yeah.
Lloyd Schwartz. Yeah. Lloyd Schwartz makes a cameo appearance in the episode, and he produced the episode and quite a few other Kings Island episodes, and he's the son of Sherwood Schwartz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this does not have much of a plot. This really is just a showcase of the park and showing them having fun. Bobby and Cindy are told not to fill up on too much stuff before lunch. And of course, that's the whole running gag with them, is that they just keep buying snacks and figuring out how that they're not actually food. So it's ice cream. Well, we're not chewing, we're licking. So it's not really the food, like the popcorn. We just have the popcorn because we want the toy in the bottom.
Ice cream is just licking. You just lick it and it kind of goes down by itself.
It's down your, yeah. Jan and Marcia are just going on different rides. The only plot point that we do have is that they all get back together at lunch. They are there, of course, because Mike has to present some plans to some investors or whatever. And this meeting is taking place a half hour before those people have to get on a plane. Even though he's been there all morning. Why they didn't bump the schedule up for this meeting to a little earlier in the morning? I'm not sure why. But he's got his plans in 2 yellow canisters. And Jan has bought a Yogi Bear poster for a kid she babysits, and she doesn't want to ruin it. And so he gives her one of the canisters, and she puts the Yogi Bear poster in it. That's like a number 1 rule when you go to any amusement park, but definitely Kings Island, especially because there are quite a few water rides.
Don't bring canisters. Oh.
Don't bring canisters. Oh, yeah, don't buy posters. Like, you buy that crap on your way out of the park. Jan.
And Jan also, as soon as she gets out of the store with it, she's ready to return it for a giraffe poster.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have time for that now. They have to go have lunch.
Yeah, they have to. Yeah. And why didn't they just give the poster to the mom? Isn't that usually what you would do?
That's her job. Or Alice. Even Alice was there.
Yeah,
the
like
Pony
you guys
Express could have ridden again.
Right.
Well, it does.
Go put it in the car, Mom. We're in Scooby-Doo Blue Row 2. Those are things that are just gone. I haven't been to Kings Island in a really long time. It got bought out. It got branded by Paramount in the 90s, and I couldn't stand it at that point in time. And now I think it's gone back to being owned by like Cedar Fair, like the Cedar Point people.
Right.
So I have no idea if that's still a thing, but that was always the joke of like you had to remember like your cartoon character and your color and your number of where you parked.
Now they're rides. The names of the aisles are rides now.
Yeah. We always tried to purposely park at Scooby-Doo Blue Row 2. Family thing. Okay.
Because the other one scared you to death, right?
No, nothing scared me there except for the Beast, and it wasn't open at this point in time, so it's okay.
So this episode, I should say too that like the previous trip episodes were the beginning of the season. This one doesn't air until November 23rd, which makes it the 11th. Mm-hmm. But I suspect that this was originally intended to be the season opener because it was actually filmed in July, and like they were only there 2 days, like July 29th and 30th of 73, I believe. And then in Barry Williams' book, when he talks about this episode, he refers to it as the season 5 opener, which it clearly was not. But I suspect that maybe the intention was to try to, and it's kind of a funny time to air this very summery episode,
Well, and if you're trying to promote tourism to this place, why air the episode in a time when it's not even open?
Closed down by then, right?
Yeah.
But this episode too is a testament to the Brady Bunch versus Partridge Family, because clearly this one is much more memorable than the time that the Partridge Family went there.
I'm going to be honest, not a huge Partridge Family fan. Like, I mean, I've seen some episodes. I kind of am okay with some of it. I really just never got into their dynamic. Never.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not the kind of show that you watch for comfort like you would the Brady Bunch.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was more like its popularity came from like, David Cassidy and like Susan Day being kind of heartthrobs or something, or like the music or whatever.
The music was bigger on the Partridge Family. I mean, they actually had big hits.
Yeah, they actually had hits. Yeah. So, and I think that's obviously what the Brady Bunch was going for. Yeah. They were kind of, once they get into like, when they get into the music episodes or whatever, and they talk about, family acts are so huge and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, obviously they're just trying to like make their own fake family act like the Partridge Family did. But, so they have their lunch, and then everybody goes back out. We see everybody on rides again. And then eventually Mr. Brady goes to his meeting, and he finds out that he has the Yogi Bear poster. And these people have to get on the plane within a half an hour. Now, I'm assuming this is like a conference room. I would think at the hotel, correct?
I think that was actually shot back in LA.
Okay, but the idea was that they were in like a hotel.
Oh, yeah.
There's not even a hotel there.
No. No. And in fact, at the end of the episode, when you see them come out, well, we'll get there, I guess. But that area, I think, where they were supposed to be in a conference room is actually the clinic, the first aid area now. That's kind of where they keep all the carts that they, if they've got to pick somebody up if they hurt themselves. They had like a whole, because I've been in there before.
Yes.
My grandson hurt his eye on the log ride, and then we actually went to first aid one time. So, yeah. And that last scene too, while we're speaking about it, was one of the first ones that they shot. And if you notice, it's pouring down rain in that shot. You can see the ground's all wet, and you can actually see the rain coming down and hitting the ground. And then you see the Scooby-Doo roller coaster behind them.
Yes, which eventually would become the Beastie.
The Beastie, and I think...
Yeah, and the Fairly Odd Coaster. So it's basically, it's a little wooden roller coaster.
Now it's the Woodstock Express.
Yeah, which is fine. I'm fine with it being Peanuts. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean...
I was a little weird on the Nickelodeon. I don't like Nickelodeon, but...
Same here. I feel the same.
Yeah, but it'll always be the Beastie to me, so... so they basically are going around, and the girls realize, oh gosh, we lost the poster. Oh, it's okay. It's not very expensive. I'm sure Dad's canisters cost a little bit though. Geez, whatever. And, so they don't really care. Well, then of course in this huge park, which I don't know at this point in time how many acres it was, but you can see the concentration of people. It is like shoulder to shoulder. You can't just like walk through where you want. And I don't think it's just because there were cameras. Like, I don't think people were flocking to. That's a lot of times how Kings Island is. It's like just packed, like uncomfortably packed. But they managed to, within, say a 15-minute real life span, find everybody, to find out that the plans are missing, and to find the plans and to Pony Express them back to the main office before these people get on a plane.
I don't have your sketches.
We've got the cylinders mixed. Where are yours?
Dad, I lost it. You lost it? And we've been practically all over the park. Oh, honey.
No, never mind. We'll split up and find it. Greg, round up the rest of the kids, and we'll turn the park upside down, and whoever finds it first, return it to the manager's office. Pronto.
Well, I've always wanted to draw out the route that they run back to, because they basically, since I know where everything is in this episode, they basically circle the entire park and backtrack about 3 times before they arrive at the front where they should. So they're just filming in odd little different locations around the park. In other words.
Like, okay, so the girls are looking in every one of the Tin Lizzies. That's in the very far back of at this point in time, what would have been this park. Like, way behind the Eiffel Tower, And the fact of the matter is, like, how did they all find each other without cell phones or walkie-talkies or whatever? They all, like, everybody's dressed like them. Everybody's got on crazy plaid pants. But, I mean, I guess Marsha's probably the only one in the park who has on a long-sleeve pink cardigan sweater and pearls in the middle of July.
And no bra.
The
braless Brady's.
Jan was super braless, like very braless. And being season 5, I mean, like, she needed a bra. But
as they move through that park too, you can really see they didn't pack it with extras. Those were all actually people that were there that day. The park was open, and you can tell there's a couple shots where you can really tell that they've corded off an area, and there's just tons of people standing there watching, and then the people kind of closer to the camera are just walking back and forth. And of course they were instructed not to look at the camera or look at the kids.
Right. I'm sure they had like a certain amount of people they wanted. Well, they had to be able to like clear the way. Like I said, you can't just run a path through a crowd at Kings Island, They would have to stage all that. But, so basically, it ends well, as every Brady Bunch episode ever has. And then Mr. Brady says, well, why don't we all go on the roller coaster? And then we end up with them on the Racers, which is a historic roller coaster. And you can tell at that point too. I mean, they're obviously on the roller coaster, but they're having fun.
And there's a lot of interesting things about the whole roller coaster ride. First of all, I don't know how many of them you may know, but first of all, Mr. Brady and Cindy refuse to ride it, so he's not on there. They ride it twice actually, and
because there's at one point in time, like in the middle of the episode.
Yeah, in the middle of the episode, they take a ride on it, and Mr. Brady's never on it. And the first time they ride it, Peter's sitting with some other girl entirely, and the second time they've put a Cindy double in with Greg, and it's so far in the back, and he's got his arms up that you can't really tell. But she has said that she refused to ride it. Then secondly, I guess they mounted a camera to the front of the car to shoot back at the Bradys. And before they sent them on it, Robert Reed said, that camera doesn't look all that safe. We better do a test run. And so they sent the roller coaster on its run, and it came back minus the camera. So theoretically, it could have come off and hit them in the face, basically. Then the other,
different times, because there is no way that like that would fly with like a major production now.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, we could have killed like 4 people, who are vacationing here.
And then the other odd thing is that it's called the Racer because the red and blue racer, they have a red and blue racer on each side, and they're always racing against each other. But in this episode, for whatever reason, there's 2 red racers racing each other. So that's weird.
And I noticed that too, and I thought maybe it was just the time, but I mean that's the idea, and I think it even still said Red Racer on the front.
It did, yeah. They both said it.
Yeah.
And then the final.
Maybe the blue just doesn't look good on camera. I don't know.
Then the final thing is the point of view shots where you actually see the tracks rather than looking back at the people. That I believe was taken from previously shot archive footage. It wasn't something they filmed for that, but the one they used, the Bradys were riding on the right red racer. The vantage point they showed was from the left racer, or the left racer. And some scenes you're on the left side of the track, where you shouldn't be. Other scenes you're on the right, but then you realize that the giant slide's on the wrong side of the roller coaster, so it's flopped completely.
Yeah.
They flop the image to make up for it, but then they go back, and then you're on the left. Because at one point, the 2 racers split off in 2 different directions, but you go the wrong side versus what car they're on.
I don't know if anybody who hasn't been there would even have noticed that there were 2 sets of tracks.
Well, it took me a long time to even realize that. I was like, why is the giant slide on that side? And then I realized that they had flopped the image. And then I also realized that, wait a minute, why are we on the left side?
So, okay, here's a fun fact that I found out not too long ago. I was very young. So we were talking about the dark ride, which I got in on the tail end of it. So the Enchanted Voyage that we talked about, that featured like some different stuff, but it featured a lot of Hanna-Barbera characters. And then it was switched to the Smurfs ride. Right. But I did some picture digging, and like the first time I remember going to Kings Island was 1981, which was the last year of that ride. And the racers were the red and blue racers, and it was the forward racers and the backward racers, and it was until not that long ago. And do you know why they started running one of them backwards?
I think it was because they shut down the Bat.
The Bat, yeah. So the Bat was a suspension roller coaster. They spent so much money on the marketing for this thing. I mean, it had those are so fun. Like I think that's one of the reasons why, I like Kings Island so much, because all the commercials seem very Scooby-Doo. With they were cartoony and the bats flying around, but it was shut down so often that they had to do something for all the disappointed people. Yeah, so they started running the one backwards.
Yeah, the backward racer was super cool, and I wish they would put it back that way for another ride.
I wonder why. I don't know why they would have changed it after all these years either. I mean, I can't imagine it being like a safety thing suddenly.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure why they did it, but they did add some new safety harnesses and things on that coaster, so it may have been. I think rules got a little more stringent, possibly.
Yeah, Probably. And it's old. It's stinking old.
So one other little fun fact is something I discovered. I was watching an episode of the Andy Griffith Show from 1961 called The Pickle Story, and they go to this county fair, and I heard this music that dun 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 dun, and it was like driving me crazy. I'm like, where do I know this music from? It's the same music they're playing in this episode.
In this entire episode,
yeah,
all the freaking way through.
Yeah, and it sounds like glass clanging or something, make part of the instrument. I don't know.
Like it's like a carousel.
Yeah, like a calliope
thing. Like like a calliope type thing or something. Which, yeah, it kind of got on my nerves after a while.
So if you go back and watch Andy Griffith, that episode, it'll get on your nerves even more. And then another thing is the director of this episode, Leslie Martinson. He did just 6 episodes of the Brady Bunch, but he's actually in the show. He's Mr. Remington. So it's kind of interesting because you got Lloyd Schwartz appearing in it. You got Mr. Remington, or Leslie Martinson as Mr. Remington. So it's almost like they didn't want to fly in as many co-stars, or extras. They had people that were already there as part of the production.
Yeah.
I think the only exception was Hillary Thompson, who was was Marge. And that football game that she's working at, that thing was there for years and years and years after. Mm-hmm. And it's there's still a version of it there now, but they're now different football players. Yeah. They're totally different now, but
a lot of, like I said, a lot of the stuff, I mean, at least Rivertown, like its structure looks almost exactly the same. A lot of those things are still there, like that spider ride.
Yeah, the monster.
Yeah, and like
Scrambler, monster.
Yeah.
The log ride.
The Tin Lizzies, the log rides. That big pizza joint.
The pizza joint, yeah, it's different. It's oddly painted purple now, but it's the exact same structure.
Yeah, it's the one that's over by where the Beast is.
Yeah, and for some reason I put a picture of that up on Facebook, and I'm friends with Susan Olsen on there, and she commented that was the worst pizza she's ever had. I'm like, oh, really? Because now it's La Rosa's. It's pretty good.
La Rosa's, yes. And like we were always like the poor kids, like we always used to have to go back out to the car and had like a cooler with like sandwiches and stuff. So like the few times we were able to get a slice of the pizza, it was like a huge treat.
Yeah.
But I probably had like lesser expectations than Susan Olsen as well.
Yeah, I mean she was living a different lifestyle, so she probably just had
She wasn't living in a trailer in rural Indiana, like it wasn't special. She wasn't eating a sandwich out of the back of their car.
Right.
In Scooby-Doo Blue Row 2.
I hope they did like those pretzels though. Those look good. Those ones over in the Oktoberfest area.
Oh yeah.
But that container of coleslaw in the Lost and Found, keep that away.
Yeah, let's just toss that, guys. Let's toss it.
Yeah.
15 minutes tops. If somebody doesn't get it, it just needs to go away. So, then, of course, he got the plans. They got back to New York and looked at them, or they looked at them on the plane and I sent a telegram. I don't know. But somehow...
Morse code, telegram, yeah.
Yeah, somehow, Mr. Phillips finds out, hey, they liked the plans, and they call Mike and say, hey, you guys can stay here a couple more days, on the company's dollar.
And they've pawned off being one of the Hanna-Barbera characters on Peter because
he got $5.
I can be convinced of a lot for $5.
Yeah, no kidding. Like walking around in that hot, nasty suit that somebody else has worn all day in July in the Midwest. Thank you.
It's funny that was their first time there, and they were already doing that, because I've been to Kings Island probably 200 times, and never once have I been involved with becoming one of the characters.
No, I haven't either. I used to kind of wonder about that, because I could always tell where they would stage all that, where the characters always came out of. And I always thought what if you went back there? Could you really get in like the Brady Bunch did?
According to Lloyd Schwartz, you have to be an employee to go back in that area. That's
true. Unless you're Greg or Peter and You have pull.
And you like a chick that works in the football throwing area.
Right.
So,
all right, so there we go. We have been across the entire country, really. I mean, we went to Hawaii, California, Arizona, and Ohio. So that's your quarantine vacation right there, kids.
I hope everybody enjoyed this, and I hope that it inspires you while you're sitting at home with nothing else to do to go check out the entire run of Brady Bunch, because it will bring you comfort and joy.
It will. And so, as I said before, most of the episodes, except for the few of the vacation ones, are available if you have CBS All Access, which I think I pay for on my Amazon, but I think I heard that right now you can actually access that for free. And then also Hulu has many of the episodes. So.
Or just buy them.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing, though, as I found out. I ordered the 2 sets at a good time, and then when I tried to order the third one, it was already shipping is a little bit of an issue right now. So you might have to stream it, but regardless, go watch them. It makes you happy.
There's a nice set out now that's got the entire Brady Bunch, every episode, plus the animated series, the Bradys, the Brady Brides, and all the Brady movies. Yes. The only thing that's missing is the variety hour.
Right. We didn't talk about a lot of that. I mean, because this is obviously we were talking about the vacations. But yeah, the Bradys had a lot of different iterations, sometimes with, different cast members being recast here and there. But yeah, there was quite a bit of Brady stuff. And I will say that I did not want to watch the Brady movie, the first one, when it came out, because I was like, that's so stupid. They're going to ruin it. I don't want to watch it. Like, I felt like it was going to be just a slap in the face. And my friend Sarah Randolph Kaminsky, I have to give a shout out on this. If I did something Brady Bunch and I did not give a shout out to Sarah, it would be a tragedy. She's been my friend since 4th grade. Brady Bunch raised us. And it is one of the things that we really bonded over. But then Sarah was like, no, Beck, you have to watch the movie. She's like, it's made for fans. It is not like a parody. It's like, not like a poking fun at parody. It is made for and by fans. And man, I tell you what, I love it. I still love it. I've got to go back and watch that. Not all the casting was like spot on. Like the guys were kind of weak. But man, Jan and Marsha, and the other one is good too. But at that point in time, it was the first one was out. So I might have to visit those too.
Yeah, they're fun. They're a lot of fun.
And they're fun. And as we were talking about like holes in the plot, you can tell that the people who wrote it are very big fans because they address some of those holes.
Right. And they throw in the same incidental music and just all kinds of throwbacks. Yeah. They
and the fact that they address what happened to Carol's husband, like that cracks me up because we already have the insinuation that Mike's wife died, but like we don't know ever what's happened to the girl's dad and why he's never there.
And they purposely kept it that way because they were going to. Sherwood Schwartz wanted her to be a divorcee, but the network said no, so they never mentioned it either way.
I mean, they can't even show a toilet. They're not going to be able to, talk about somebody being divorced. Even though that's the plot of the show. That was the whole idea. Or the impetus for it was because divorce was being so... Yeah. It was so high. But that's okay. All right. Well, we will be back probably... I think we're aiming for, once a month, right? Because, I mean, there's a lot of prep involved with these episodes. So who knows what we'll come back with.
Who knows?
Anything just really jumping out at you that you've just been biting to do or talk about?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh. But you're asking the listeners.
The only other person.
I guess I am the only one in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've got it. I could talk about anything.
Yeah, but is there anything that's just really standing out that you've just been really dying to revisit?
Oh, well, It's Your Move, of course. And I just got to talk about It's Your Move. Mark Price, who played Skippy on Family Ties, had has not a podcast but a radio show, so I had to do I did a live interview. He interviewed me actually, which it would made more sense to do it vice versa, but he interviewed me, and I ended up talking mostly about It's Your Move on his. It's a Back to the 80s show.
He can put it on SoundCloud. It was a live show, and I missed it because I didn't realize it was a live show.
It's like a daily broadcast, so they don't really have any reason to. So I don't know.
Well, we could always try to get Mark and Scott Valentine to come on and talk Family Ties with us.
Yes, we could.
We could. That would be awesome. Hey.
That
sounded more like Fonzie than Nick.
Yo, Mallory.
Yeah. Yo,
they're both great guys.
Yeah. So we have all kinds of possibilities, so we'll figure it out. But we hope you enjoyed this break from the quarantine as you went on your Bradycation with Sitcom Kaleidoscope. Thank you guys for listening.
Have fun, guys. Stay safe.
We lost a container.
Container? Yeah. Oh, got a lot of containers. Big day for containers. Got a container gold slug.